but also, like, honestly, Something Upstairs. I love ghost stories, and that was probably the one that got me into reading. And
Really?
I read it after my initial the grade level I think it was intended for because I was late to the game. Um, and then yeah, I think those two books. But then there was also one called No Promises in the Wind. I forget who the author is, and I
Right.
hate that I did, but it's back there somewhere on the
Doesn't
bookshelf.
matter. You
Um,
remember it. You
but
remember the experience. Yeah.
yeah, it was just this story about these boys who they have to leave their home. It's during the Depression era, and they run away with the circus. And he befriends this lady who plays a clown. I don't know, there's just something really romantic about it, but also heartbreaking.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
Um,
Something upstairs. I lived in that house. That's a real house. You can go on Google Maps and see it.
yeah,
And
I
and
pulled the
there's
trivia. What I think the reason that book was accessible to me was I came from a New England town that is inextricably haunted by history. It has a lot of history going all the way back to the colonial era, but then it also has a lot of World War II history because we have all these oil tanks buried underneath the island because it was a secret fuel depot for the U.S. Navy.
huh.
And these big mounds in the middle of the island are still there, but nobody really, we're not allowed to dig them up or anything.
It's interesting.
Um, so something about New England ghost stories that I gravitate to. Um, and one of the interesting things about it too is it's presented almost in a way where you wonder if it's true or not. And there's no way to disprove somebody's experience. When the intro by the author says this is his story, I believe him. Hold on, I'm not hearing anything. Sorry. Not
Okay.
sure what. Oh, there we go.
That's the curious thing about that book. When I first submitted it to my editor, that introduction was not there. However, when I first wrote the book, it was there, and then I took it out. And it's based on something that really happened to me. I was visiting a school, see how well you remember the book. If I was visiting a school doing class visits and so forth, and a teacher says to me, will you have some time? There's some boy who's desperate to speak to you, and but he won't tell us why. Well, of course, my curiosity is piqued, right? So sure, happy to do it. So I go through the day, and the teacher then pulls me aside. Okay, we have the boy in this private room. You can go see him now. So I go into this room. It's probably a conference room, and this kid is sitting there, 10, 11, and he's fiddling with his keychain. And I say, "Hi, I'm Avi. I understand you really wanted to speak to me." He said, "Yeah, I do." Well, what's it all about? And he says, "I just wanted to say hi." And that was it. Totally inexplicable. But that's in the book,
Yeah.
except it doesn't have that punchline, so to speak. But so I use that, and I can't tell you how many people who read that book say to me, was that true? One of the people in the publishing company called me up to ask me if it was true. And the answer is no. I mean, it's a story about time travel, you know? I mean,
Yeah. They want
so
it to be true, I think.
absolutely.
I want
But
it to be true.
but the thing is that opening is true, right? I just
Yeah.
told you, except for the not the oh, hi, so that there's a whole sort of term for that kind of story. It's called a framed story. That is to say, it's a projection of the storyteller. Probably the most famous one of that is Henry James' The Turn of the Screw. And it starts off with a bunch of adults sitting around sharing stories. And this guy says, here, let me tell you this story. And then the book starts. And anyway, I've used it a couple of times. It's very effective because it draws the reader in just the way it drew you in and gives it a feeling of verisimilitude. And it's not a coincidence that Turn of the Screw is a ghost story as well. So it's not as if, the way I explain it is, if I said to you, the other day I met this ghost, he was walking down the street and we got into a talk, you'd say, yeah, sure, okay. But if I say to you, I heard this weird story the other day. This guy told me he was traveling on a bus, and this guy said, and then, proceeds to tell me it has this level, by removing it, the narration, somehow it draws it closer. I don't pretend to understand it, but it works. It does work. It's really good.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what the Coen brothers did with Fargo, insisting that everything is true, even though none
Right.
of it was true. But you somehow find a way to access the story more.
Now, the other side to this thing, that particular book, as I said, I lived in that house.
Yeah.
And the local historical society in Providence, as a way of teaching kids about Providence history, conducted tours around the town. I don't know if you know Providence. It's a very beautiful city. Anyway, and so they'd bring crowds of kids to my door who wanted to look at the house where the ghost was. And then they would chant, AVI, AVI, trying to pull me out of the house and so forth. Anyway, the house is still there. And recently I wrote another book that also began in Providence. And I figured I might as well start this in the same house. Why not? So,
Hey everyone, thanks for visiting my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification.